Hey guys, have you ever felt like love is one big, messy puzzle that you can't quite solve, filled with missing pieces and a couple of strange stains? Well, imagine waking up next to the person you thought was your soulmate, only to find out they've got a secret that could rival any plot twist from a telenovela. Before we dive into this roller coaster of romance gone awry, hit that like button if you've ever had a relationship that felt like a soap opera, and drop a comment with your craziest love story. Now dim the lights, maybe pour yourself a glass of something strong, and let's jump into this tale of passion, betrayal, and all the deliciously dark secrets that unravel when the truth comes crashing in. The grand ballroom of Silverleaf Manor was a panorama of revelry, where opulence breathed life into the evening air. Glittering chandeliers, dripping with crystals, refracted golden light onto the vibrant costumes of the guests, each more lavish than the next. The music wafted through the hall like a warm summer breeze, coaxing laughter and lively chatter from the crowd. In the midst of it all stood Alara, her emerald gown trailing like a whisper behind her, her masked face sparkling with intrigue. It was as if she were a phoenix emerging from the ashes of some forgotten tale, still tied by invisible threads to a destiny shrouded in shadows and secrets. What she could not foresee was how her secret would hurtle her into the arms of someone tied to her past, a fox in a finely embroidered suit named Lord Cedric, with charm as striking as a Hollywood heartthrob on a red carpet. Alara's heart raced, a fierce drum echoing the unspoken tension that crackled between her and the dashing Lord Cedric. Their gazes locked, and time stretched like a piece of taffy pulled by a toddler with excitement and just a hint of paranoia. As he approached, every step echoed the unmasking of a potential fate, each infinitesimal sway feeling like a dance-off between destiny and delight. With a grin that could charm the sun into shining brighter, Cedric extended his hand, and Alara, reluctantly tethered to her secret, took it the moment their fingers intertwined. A spark of chemistry ignited, flooding her with warmth as intoxicating as a fine wine served too cold. Who could have imagined that amidst an evening of laughter and glamour lurked the specter of betrayal, a subplot worthy of Merida's complicated love life from Brave? Only the stakes felt a bit higher here. As they danced, every twirl and dip sent shivers down Alara's spine, a mingling of ecstasy and dread. The sweet scent of jasmine drifted through the air like a gentle caress, but just beneath it lay a sharp undertone of anxiety. Her secret clawed at her, a persistent shadow lurking behind the joy. Cedric's vibrant laughter rang out, his rich voice melting into the melodies spinning around them. But inside her chest, a tempest brewed, every movement, she fought the urge to confess, imagining the room turning cold and stark as an Arctic wasteland at the mention of her lineage. Each line of his face became a canvas, and she felt like the twisty plot of a telenovela, ready to unravel at the slightest nudge. The irony was thick in the air, for how could a dance as delightful as this not end in despair? And then came the moment that knocked the breath out of her. Cedric leaned closer, his voice a tantalizing whisper suspended between them. "You are a magnificent dancer, Alara. What brings you to this gathering? Surely a jewel like you isn't here by chance." She barely managed a smirk, contemplating the delicious irony that she was indeed a jewel in a wreck of a crown, masquerading among the glitterati. Was she prepared to deflect his probing gaze with a clever quip, or would she strip herself bare with truth? As her eyes flickered to the masked faces around her, each one hiding its own secrets, Alara felt the weight of knowing just how many lives had danced with shadows tonight. Maybe they were all just players in a game of intrigue, meant to mislead and confuse, like every spin-off of a classic sitcom that ran long after it should have. But there, perched at the precipice of revelation, Alara caught a glimpse of Cedric's vulnerability. He too was draped in decorum, but beneath his mask lay a soul wrapped in its own secrets, waiting for the right moment to emerge. In that electric instant, Alara made a choice. Perhaps they could carve a new story completely, one that did not rely upon the burdens of the past. She would need to play her cards right and hope that, like a well-crafted superhero story, love might just triumph against mighty odds. One dance, one secret, and one whispered word could alter their fates forever. The winds of betrayal would swirl, but perhaps tonight a new page could turn. As they swayed, sinuous and elegant, among the glimmering chandeliers, it became clear love was the grandest twist of them all, and tonight's masquerade might just reveal the deepest truths. In the heart of the bustling city, where the cobblestone streets whispered secrets of old, Alara and Cedric wove their own tale beneath the veil of night. Cloaked in shadows, they met in a hidden garden that bloomed with night-blooming jasmine, its sweet fragrance wrapping around them like an embrace. With every hushed word and lingering touch, their desires danced wildly, igniting a flame that burned brightly against the chill of the encroaching darkness. Here, they dreamed of futures embroidered with laughter and painted in vibrant hues, as if they were the stars in a romantic comedy, desperately trying to win their happily ever after. Little did they know, there were darker forces lurking, ready to throw their delicate dreams into a tempest of chaos and betrayal. But then, like a thunderstorm crashing on a sunny day, Lucian appeared at the periphery of Alara's life, a specter from the past with a twisted agenda. The air grew heavy with unspoken fears, and the acrid scent of revenge filled the atmosphere around him. With a grin that could curdle milk, he toyed with the threads of their family's history, plotting to expose Alara's secret identity, along with the scars left by their parents' scandals. His laughter echoed in the back of her mind, a chilling reminder that the past might never truly be buried. And just like a horror movie antagonist, he thrived on chaos. While Cedric blossomed in love, Lucien lurked in the shadows, sharpening his claws for a calculated strike that would shatter their fragile union. Every clandestine rendezvous Alara and Cedric shared became laced with an undercurrent of tension, as if some unseen force was whispering to them, "Enjoy it while it lasts." Cedric was blissfully unaware of the storm brewing just beyond his reach, his heart brimming with affection, while Alara's pulse raced with fear. The crisp evening air offered no comfort, as Alara made every attempt to conceal the turmoil within, suppressing the sounds of her racing thoughts and the bitter taste of betrayal that lingered on her tongue. It was as if they were living in a romantic tragedy penned by a particularly sadistic playwright, where every gesture of love was juxtaposed against the specter of impending doom. Yet passion is blinding, and in the throes of their fierce connection, it became harder for Alara to distinguish the warmth of the future from the cold claws of her past. As shadows grew longer, and the once innocent garden became a battlefield of emotions, Alara realized she had to confront the enigma that was her brother. Lucien had woven himself into every painful moment of her youth, a thorny vine of manipulation that choked the very joy from their family's roots. The scent of rain hung in the air before a storm, preparing to unleash chaos, a tumultuous confrontation with the brother she had long since tried to forget. There was a bittersweet humor lodged in her throat, how typical of family drama to erupt in a place meant for love and laughter. Only in her wildest daydreams had she imagined love being so entangled with betrayal, a plot twist worthy of a hit television series, where real life, unfortunately, craved far less romantic resolutions. With every heartbeat sounding like a drum in her ears, Alara braced herself for the inevitable clash with Lucien. It was a confrontation soaked in layers of resentment, past regrets, and the realization that love, for all its beauty, often thrives in the shadows of pain. As she stood on the precipice, the air thick with anticipation, she dared to hope that love could conquer even the darkest of betrayals. Yet her laughter echoed hollow, almost mocking the purity of Cedric's intentions as she prepared for war, an ironic twist as her quest for love turned into a battle for survival. If they were to rise from this chaos, Secrets had to unravel like a tattered quilt, and Alara had to decide just how far she was willing to go to protect the love that flickered amidst the impending darkness. In the flickering candlelight of the grand hall, where laughter mingled with the clinking of crystal glasses, Cedric discovered a letter that would upend his world. The parchment, yellowed and crisp, bore no name, yet its contents seemed to throb like a wounded heart as he read the words aloud in his mind. Alara's lineage, hidden beneath layers of silk and charm, was anything but simple. Each revelation sent chills down his spine, turning the once joyous soiree into a battleground of doubt. The scent of roses that adorned the evening air suddenly felt suffocating, as if the true essence of the gathering had shifted from celebration to scrutiny. And there he stood, wavering between the familiar ties of blood and the intoxicating pull of newfound love, his heart a pendulum caught between allegiance and desire. As Cedric wrestled with the crumpled letter in his pocket, the laughter around him began to take on an unsettling edge, a cacophony of secrets woven into every note. The whispers of ladies fluttered like moths to the flame of gossip, while men boasted loudly of their conquests, oblivious to the storm brewing in Cedric's heart. He could almost hear the clashing of swords, a duel not of steel, but of loyalty and love. With each moment that passed, he felt the weight of his lineage like a chain around his neck, pulling him back towards family. Yet every glance towards Alara pulled him forward. The air hung heavy with unspoken truths, almost electric, and Cedric knew that soon enough the night would explode in a flurry of accusations and revelations. And then, like the unfolding of a tragic play, Lucien, his brother, strode into the midst of the soiree, his eyes alight with mischief and spite. The life of the party turned nefarious villain. He held the crowd captive, his voice as smooth as aged whiskey, but laden with bitterness. With a flourish that could rival any magician, Lucien unveiled Alara's true ancestry, a truth wrapped in scandal, her identity hanging in the air like that one awkward dance move at a wedding no one knows how to execute. Gasps rippled through the gathered lot as Cedric's heart raced and shattered simultaneously. Friends darted their eyes between the siblings, their laughs now strangled cries of disbelief. It was as if the very earth beneath them had cracked open, revealing secrets that were never meant to see the light of day. The tension crackled like a poorly tuned radio, sharp and raw, as Alara's face blanched, a porcelain doll on the brink of shattering. Her eyes, usually brimming with warmth, now glimmered with undiluted fury and despair as she faced Cedric, the betrayal a serrated knife between them. "How could you, Lucien?" she cried, her voice quivering, a melody of heartache that haunted the evening. In that moment, the opulent ballroom dulled, the chandeliers dimming, as if they too sensed the weight of fractured trust. Cedric felt the swift punch of reality. Loyalty bent under the pressure of scandal, and love twisted into something grotesque. And he realized he was losing her. Like sand slipping dangerously through an hourglass, Alara stood tall, though she felt the world around her collapsing. Her spirit was a phoenix fighting against the ashes of ruined trust. She wasn't merely fighting for the honor of her lineage, but for her heart and the love she thought she shared with Cedric. The whispers of the onlookers became a chorus, murmurs of shame and betrayal, echoing in her ears, while she yearned for a shred of understanding from the man she had cherished. "You know me," she implored, the desperation thick in her throat like a bitter potion. "Do you really believe my heritage defines who I am?" The night would not end in quietude, for when love meets betrayal, the unraveling of secrets is but the beginning of a tale woven with chaos, heartache, and the ever-persistent thrum of hope amidst the ruins. Alara strode into the assembly like a warrior ready for battle, her heart pounding like a drum in a marching band. The air crackled with tension, thick with betrayal, and the scent of sweat from countless noblemen clad in their finest attire. Lucian stood at the front, a smug smirk plastered across his face, but Alara wasn't about to be intimidated. With a fierce determination, she held up a trembling finger and declared, "Your deceitful schemes end tonight." The murmurs around the hall sounded like a swarm of angry bees, buzzing with intrigue, as the chandeliers overhead cast a flickering light on faces painted with both curiosity and disbelief. This was not just a spat in the playroom. It was a showdown worthy of an epic saga, where love and loyalty clashed like titans in the arena of life. As Cedric stood there, caught between Alara's fierce gaze and Lucian's manipulative charm, the weight of the world pressed upon his shoulders like the heaviest of cloaks. Memories of laughter shared with Alara flickered through his mind, painting a portrait of a love that felt both tender and explosive, like popcorn popping in a hot, buttery machine. But the shadows of doubt whispered insidiously in his ear, each word filled with betrayal and obligation. "Do you really think love can conquer all?" they seemed to sneer, wrapping around him like the freshly spun cotton candy at a carnival, sweet, yet too sticky to pull apart. As the assembly's gaze fell on him, Cedric felt the room narrow, the walls closing in like those metaphorical, judgmental eyes he had always feared. Would he stand by Alara and face the chaos together? Or would he flee and let deceit reign supreme? With every passing moment, the truth began to unravel like an old, well-loved book, its pages fraying at the edges. Alara unveiled secrets from the past, each revelation a dagger aimed not just at Lucien, but at the fabric of Cedric's own family history. The hall, once echoing with whispers, fell silent as tales of long-forgotten alliances and bitter rivals spilled forth like secrets released from a sealed vault. "Remember when you thought you were the hero of your story," she quipped, a playful yet cutting tone lacing her words. "Well, spoiler alert, your family isn't as innocent as you were led to believe." The irony of it all hung in the air, a thick fog of twisted legacies and unbound love that would change Cedric's path forever. Much like how a good twist in a movie turns a meek protagonist into a badass hero. The emotions that roiled in Cedric's chest mirrored a tempest at sea, waves crashing and crashing again against the rocks of his beliefs. Loud gasps erupted like popcorn popping in the microwave as revelations unraveled his family's secrets had deep roots entwined with Lucien's treachery, their dark past looming over him like the ominous clouds before a storm. Cedric never imagined that his blood could harbor the scent of treachery, a pungent perfume that clung to him like a guilty secret. He glanced at Alara, whose fierce spirit ignited an undeniable fire within him, a fire that longed to burn through the pettiness of lineage and illuminate the truth of their bond. As his heart wrestled with duty, he could almost hear the dramatic soundtrack play in the background, giving him that instant moment of clarity. His choice was not about blood, but about the heart. And so, as the dust began to settle around them, and the assembly transformed from a hostile audience to a respectful witness of courage, Cedric made his choice. He stepped forward, shaking off the chains of expectation, as if they were spider webs that had once ensnared him. "I choose love," he declared, his voice steady and rich like an aged wine, cutting through the tension like a well-aimed arrow. Alara's eyes sparkled, a mixture of relief and fierce pride swelling within her, like a balloon ready to burst with joy. Cedric turned to Lucien, the betrayer, and offered a smile tinged with irony, because in love, it seems, the most unexpected alliances can bloom amidst chaos. As laughter erupted from a few brave souls behind them, a sign that perhaps, just perhaps, the light of truth could overshadow the darkness of betrayal. As the first blush of dawn broke over Silverleaf Manor, it painted the sprawling grounds in shades of amber and rose, banishing the lingering shadows of betrayal that had prowled through its hallowed halls. Alara sat on the weathered stone steps, her heart still fluttering in the aftermath of truth's fierce, stormy unveiling. The morning air hung heavy with the scent of damp earth, mingling with the ethereal perfume of blooming jasmine. A reminder that life continues, even when hearts are besieged by chaos. She inhaled deeply, the pleasant fragrance entwining with the bittersweet remnants of deceit, knowing this day could either shatter or fortify their futures. In her chest, the fires of hope flickered nervously, as both a balm and a challenge in this uneasy peace, with Cedric looming on the horizon of her heart once more. Cedric approached, with the first rays of sunlight catching in his tousled hair, an airy halo against the backdrop of that hauntingly beautiful manor. All his earlier reservations seemed as distant as the cumulus clouds now drifting lazily in the sky. He had cast off the shibboleth of societal norms, booted them into the ether like a worn-out shoe, determined to wear his heart on his sleeve for the world to see. As he neared Alara, the weight of vulnerability pressed upon him, yet felt strangely liberating. It was a daring move akin to hosting a Star Wars marathon at a Trekkie convention. But for love, Cedric would brave the storm, willing to stand naked against the squalls of judgment if it meant capturing Alara's heart anew. Amidst this fragile moment between lovebirds, Lucian loomed at the periphery, nursing the ghosts of his past vengeance. His heart bore the smell of ash and regret, a scent too familiar after the fires of his furious machinations. Yet as dawn unfurled its petals, it illuminated his path to reconciliation. Perhaps he too could shed the cloak of spite and forge a new identity. He shuffled toward Alara and Cedric, his steps tentative yet imposing, like a hesitant bear emerging from winter's slumber, unsure if the world outside still held anger or acceptance. With each breath of fresh morning air, he found that admitting his mistakes tasted bitter, like unsweetened tea. But it was a necessary step towards healing, for it was now or never. The trio gathered, a peculiar mix of tenderness and uncertainty swirling among them like the morning mist that clung to the loaded branches of their surroundings. Their laughter was tentative at first, like the first cracking of ice on a still lake, but slowly it began to echo with the refreshing sound of rebirth. Cedric's sweeping declarations of affection reverberated off the walls of the manor, and with each word, Alara felt herself bloom, her heart unfurling like a flower greeting the dawn. Each stolen glance shared among the three was charged with the undeniable flavor of hope, a promise dripping with tantalizing tension. It was a friendship forged anew, doused in honesty, preserving the sweetness of their second chances, and echoing the resilience of the human spirit. As the warmth of sunlight filtered through the trees, illuminating their beaming faces, the past still clung to the edges like cobwebs, delicate, yet too haunting to dismiss completely. Yet the air felt different now. It was imbued with the electric energy of a love story that had crawled through treachery and emerged reborn. Alara realized that they had woven a tale rich with trials and triumphs, reminiscent of heroes in epic films, victoriously facing inexplicable odds. In that tranquil kitchen of Silverleaf, laughter mingled with the brewing aroma of fresh coffee, a potion to ward off the dark tendrils of their former lives. She reached for Cedric's hand, feeling the heat radiate between them like a vibrant sunrise, and knew this was but the beginning of their new, audacious journey, a saga of love reborn, transforming dawn into an emblem of hope. Beneath the shimmering veil of stars, the ancient city of Eldoria whispered tales of intrigues and ambitions. In these shadowy streets, where the wind carried secrets like the rustle of silk skirts, Lady Isolde slipped into her disguise. The moonlight danced off her dark cloak, a stark contrast to the fiery auburn of her hair, hidden beneath a simple hood. Her heart raced with the thrill of rebellion. This wasn't just another dreary ball full of drab noblemen discussing crops and taxes. No, tonight she would risk more than her reputation. She sought the intoxicating thrill of genuine connection, the kind that was as forbidden as it was exhilarating, like sneaking a kiss in a crowded venue while your parents are watching from the sidelines, judging every move you make. The gathering place was a dimly lit tavern, filled with the pungent aromas of sour wine and roasted meat, ingredients that promised a rollicking night of revelry, and perhaps a tad too much debauchery. Lord Cashin reclined almost thoughtfully at a shadowy corner table, a brooding figure with smoldering eyes any heartthrob actor would envy. He was a diplomat, a man whose every word dripped with the weight of delicate negotiations and secret alliances, and Isolde felt drawn to him as if she were a moth to a flame. Their eyes met, and in that instant it was as though the entire world around them faded into a hushed reverie, leaving only the intensity of unspoken words and 1,000 fleeting possibilities lingering in the air. Even the tavern's raucous laughter seemed to hush in reverence to this electric connection, blossoming amidst treachery, brewing just outside the door. Butterflies danced in Isolde's stomach, mingling boldly with a sense of mischief as she approached his table. The thrill of the unknown whispering promises of adventure. The moment she spoke, it was like spilling dark wine upon pristine linen, dangerous but oh so enticing. Lord Cashin, I presume, she teased, her voice rich yet dipped in honeyed allure, each syllable a sweet defiance of convention. He raised an eyebrow, tasting her words with unexpected curiosity and a hint of intrigue, a smirk betraying the stoic facade of a man with many burdens. If ever there were a scene worthy of a grand romantic epic, it was this. A noblewoman with aspirations, meeting a man with secret loyalties, both suffocating in a web of political games, like playing chess while balancing a plate of the finest desserts, one wrong move, and it could all come crashing down. Yet, as they exchanged flirtatious banter, the truth of their circumstances loomed ominously in the corners of the tavern, lurking like a watchful predator. Each smile shared felt like an act of rebellion, defying the harsh realities dictated by their powerful families. Just outside, the sounds of the city pulsed with energy. Merchants haggled over wares, while watchmen clanged their metal implements, a discordant symphony that masked the whispers of betrayal. With each word, the stakes rose higher, flirtation morphing into a heady dance of dangerous promises, one that could unravel their very world if caught. Their bond became a fragile tapestry, woven with the threads of unfiltered desire and the weight of consequence that threatened to strangle them should anyone uncover their secret rendezvous. As the night deepened, shadows enveloped them more intimately, wrapping them in a cloak of dangerous intimacy that seemed to dare fate to intervene. Isolde felt her pulse quicken as Cassian leaned forward, his voice low and conspiratorial, pulling her into a whirlpool of dreams and hopes that felt dangerously real in the flickering candlelight. They laughed, whispered, and considered the impossibility of it all over a shared goblet, which was remarkably less romantic and much messier than it sounded. It was as if the universe had conspired to throw them together for this forbidden moment. A classic rom-com scenario bolstered by real stakes and palpable tension, minus the cheerful music and happy endings guaranteed. And in that fleeting hour, amidst the sweet agony of an unthinkable possibility, both Isolde and Cassian understood that their destinies had just collided, potentially igniting flames that could either forge a legendary love or lay waste to their ambitions and family honor forever. In the heart of Eldoria, where the sun kissed the cobblestone streets and the scent of blooming roses wafted through the air, Isolde and Cassian found themselves tangled in a web of secrets. Beneath the grandeur of gilded chandeliers and the whispers of silk dresses at lavish gatherings, their hearts beat to a rhythm only they could hear. In a world adorned with golden trinkets and perfumed intrigue, each stolen glance felt like a spark amidst the encroaching darkness. It was like something out of a Shakespearean play, only with fewer sword fights and more guarded gazes. But oh, how easily the blood ran cold when they recalled the heavy weight of their worlds, conspiring to keep them apart, like a Halloween haunted house, where the scare is not just the ghosts, but also the relentless reality waiting outside the door. As political tensions spiraled through the noble circles like wildfire in a drought, whispers of rebellion brewed in shadowy corners. The denizens of Eldoria could detect discontent in the air, thick as the smoke from a poorly made campfire. This was no mere gossip. It was a dangerous undercurrent swirling around them, creeping closer like a villain in a suspense thriller. Cashin found himself caught in the middle of this brewing storm, his heart torn between a loyalty that felt like a chain and a love that lit a fire within him. Could he really allow his clandestine affection for Isolde to become a pawn in a game far larger than himself? He pondered the irony. Here he was, risking it all for a romance that could turn into both tragedy and farce, especially if her family found out he was secretly plotting against them. Every evening, beneath the watchful gaze of 1,000 stars, Isolde and Cashin would steal away to hidden gardens, transformed into their own ephemeral sanctuary. The air thickened with the sweet scent of jasmine blossoms, wrapping around them like an embrace, while the soft rustle of leaves whispered promises of love and adventure. Here, in the tranquil alcoves, lit only by flickering candles, their laughter danced on the night air, a sound too beautiful for the chaos outside. Yet, amidst their shared hopes and dreams, a cold chill often crept into Isolde's heart, reminding her of the iron grip her family's expectations had on her life. She imagined herself as a bird pinned beneath the weight of her own gilded cage, desperate for flight, but paralyzed by the fear of plunging into a world steeped in disappointment. Cashin, with that tousled hair and a smile that could charm an ogre, struggled under the burden of his dual life, a nobleman by birth, a conspirator under the moonlight. He felt like a character who had wandered an enchanted forest, only to realize he was both the fearless hero and the hapless villain in his own story. As he moved through the high society events, the clinking of wine glasses echoed like a countdown to a ticking bomb. Every laugh seemed to mock him, reminding him of the stakes involved. The looming threat of betrayal hung heavier than a funeral shroud, and he knew one wrong step could lead to the unraveling of everything, especially Isolde's family, whose very foundation trembled beneath their own secrets and lies. What a tragic irony! To love deeply and passionately while standing on the fragile precipice of betrayal, very much like a romantic comedy gone horribly wrong. Meanwhile, Isolde's mind lingered between the sweetness of their secret rendezvous and the bitterness of her family's ambitions, which pushed her as relentlessly as a politician hunting for votes. She could almost hear the anguished cries of her dreams caught in a relentless tug-of-war, battling against the expectations like a game of tug-of-war gone rogue. In the soft glow of twilight, she played with the idea of rebellion. Perhaps a little revolt was just what Eldoria needed, if only to disrupt the stuffy air of her family's endless plans. Yet, the thought of stepping beyond her well-defined role sent shudders through her spine, making her a reluctant hero in her own narrative, a woman torn between duty and desire. With every hidden kiss whispered in the shadowy gardens, echoing the words of a love song lost to time. Ah, and so they continued, entwined in stolen moments, unaware that the greatest battles awaited them not in the gardens, but in the court of their own deceitful world. The heavy oak doors of the council chamber swung open with a thunderous creak, echoing through the marble halls like a banshee's wail. Cassian stood, heart racing like a horse in the final stretch, as the sharp scent of burning candles mixed with the faint odor of fear wafted from anxious counselors. Whispers swirled around him like malevolent spirits ready to snatch away his breath. Treachery, one voice barked, sending chills down his spine, a word that cut sharper than a dagger, and hung in the air like a dense fog, clouding everything it touched. His pulse throbbed in his ears as he glanced around. The faces of allies twisted with betrayal, transforming friendly smiles into hidden daggers aimed at his back. Little did they know, Cassian's heart was already entangled with a secret that could unravel them all. Isolde, meanwhile, lurking in the shadows. Isolde's own heart raced with a mixture of dread and determination. The dimly lit corridors of the palace echoed with her footfalls, the sweet scent of fresh herbs mingling with the sour notes of anxiety that danced in her stomach. Fueled by the fear of losing Cassian, she dove headfirst into the murky waters of political intrigue, hunting for the source of the betrayal like a lioness tracking prey. She navigated through whispers and glances, digging through secrets buried deeper than her grandmother's crusty, old cookie jar. The irony was thick, trusting the very people who propped her up in one breath could stab her in another. But loyalty, she'd learned, was as fickle as a politician's promise, and she was determined to at least pin down one verifiable truth before the web fully tightened around them. As the walls of their sanctuary began to close in, Cassian and Isolde laid plans, their breaths mingling as they whispered fervent strategies, plotting their escape like two spies slipping through enemy lines. The dim flicker of candles cast wavering shadows across their faces, illuminating determination mixed with desperation, heartwarming yet perilous. We're like characters in one of those adventure tales, you know, Cassian quipped, trying to lighten the moment, though humor danced nervously on his tongue, just missing the masked villain and the loyal steed to carry us away. Isolde couldn't help but smile, even as the tension in her chest coiled tighter. Truthfully, they were the villains of their own story, unwitting protagonists in a drama where the stakes were life and death. But as they began to breathe life into their plan, cracks appeared in their network of allies, a reminder that trust, much like fine crystal, could shatter with a single misstep. Whispers from the council seeped into the streets. The public was buzzing with speculation like bees around a blooming flower, each guess more dangerous than the last. Cries of treason echoed, mingling with the scent of street vendors selling suspiciously named pastries, treason tart, anyone. The looming threat of betrayal tightened the noose. And suddenly, every ally seemed like a potential spy, every friend a secret informant. Cassian and Isolde huddled together, sharing furtive glances, their hands intertwined like ivy clinging to an ancient wall, each heartbeat reverberating loudly in the tension-filled air. Timing, they knew, would be everything. As dusk draped the city in shadows, Isolde and Cassian prepared for their last night in the heart of the betrayals they had called home. The smell of rain lingered, promising a cleansing, though little did they know the storm outside mirrored their internal turmoil. They shared one last, lingering kiss, the taste of salt and sorrow mixing on their lips as they steeled themselves for the uncertainty ahead. With the stakes higher than a tightrope walker at a carnival, they stole away into the night, hearts pounding like war drums, led by the flickering glow of hope for a new dawn. Together, they were weaving a tale far more thrilling than any forbidden romance could promise. It was a struggle for survival, and together, they were ready to face the world, even if it meant leaving everything behind. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting shades of crimson and indigo across the royal palace, the grand ball unfolded like a lavish peacock, unfurling its feathers. The air buzzed with excitement, perfumed with the sweet scent of jasmine and the sharp tang of roasted meats from the banquet. Isolde, draped in a gown of emerald silk that shimmered like starry night, wove through the throngs of nobles, her heart racing in time with the waltz. Cassian, sharply dressed and poised in the classic black and white of a dapper gentleman, danced along beside her, their shared glances more electric than the chandeliers illuminating the grand hall. With every spin, every twirl, the world around them blurred. Yet the impending weight of their escape lay like lead in their bellies, heavy as a winter coat in a summer sun. Amidst the laughter and clinking glasses, towering glass chandeliers sparkled overhead, reflecting the flickering candlelight, while the strains of violins filled the air, tickling at the edges of their resolve. Isolde leaned in, whispering through the gaudy veneer of the soiree, "We have to act tonight, before they realize we're planning to jump ship." Cassian, his dark eyes alight with mischief and purpose, nodded slightly, but a shadow crossed his features, the unmistakable stir of anxiety, like a storm cloud rolling in on an otherwise sunny day. He held her gaze, and she felt the electric current pulse between them, an invisible tether forged in the fires of danger and attraction. Just then, the moment cracked like fine china underfoot, as a highborn lord raised a glass in honor of the crown, drowning out their plans with a boisterous cheer. Just as the tension simmered to a near boil, the music shifted, and an all too familiar tune floated out, a song that had haunted them since their first secretive meeting. The notes curled through the air, each one steeped in painful memories and tantalizing hope. Suddenly, with the ease of a seasoned actor, Cassian spun Isolde into the center of that grand ballroom, commanding the attention of everyone as if he were the undone hero in a cliched romance movie, his broken past hidden behind a charming smile. But there, amid the swirling skirts and glittering crowns, the truth slammed into Isolde like a wild gust of wind. A whispered rumor floated through the crowd, ultimately turning her world upside down. Cassian, her confidant and lover, had ties to the very force they sought to escape, the very enemy they hoped to thwart. How elegantly cruel the fates are, she thought, teetering on the precipice of heartbreak and betrayal. A sense of dread clawed at Isolde's throat, making each breath taste like boiled cabbage, bitter and cloying. A confrontation felt inevitable, like waiting for an explosion in a room full of fireworks. Beneath the gleaming chandeliers, the other guests twirled in ignorance of the storm brewing at their feet. As Cassian and Isolde stepped aside, hidden in the shadows cast by fabric and light, he pleaded for understanding, his voice low and rough around the edges, like gravel scraping against stone. The ballroom pulsed with life outside their little bubble of turmoil. Yet inside, the air grew heavy with the weight of choices waiting to be made. Would she condemn him to save herself, or trust in the fragile bond they had forged? Irony dripped like honey from the question, sweet yet thick with painful truth. In that moment, under the watchful gaze of 100 glittering eyes and the weight of 1,000 choices, Isolde felt something snap inside her, an ironclad resolve mingled with the chaos of love and fury. It was as if they'd stumbled into a tragic play where the audience held its breath, waiting for the next line. "You don't understand," she hissed, her voice a mere breath against the symphony of laughter and chatter outside. "If you've betrayed me, then we are both as good as dead." Yet Cassian's expression shifted, revealing layers of hurt, defiance, and yearning, all in a heartbeat. As the music swelled one last time, echoing off the marble walls, she realized that sometimes love is not just a simple chord, but a dissonance of choices waiting to unfold, each note a step closer to salvation or damnation, an elegy for what they might lose, or the love that could yet set them free. As dawn's golden rays broke over the horizon, A gentle breeze swept through the trees, rustling their leaves like a soft symphony. Isolde stood hand in hand with Cassian at the edge of the castle, her heart racing with the thrill of the moment. The world around them shimmered with dew, fresh and vibrant, like a painter's canvas touched by the first breath of inspiration. They had waged a quiet battle against a tide of treachery that had seeped into the very bones of their court. And now, as the sun rose, so did the hope that they could rebuild, with the light spilling over the hills. It was almost as if fate itself was giving them a wink, nudging them forward into the uncertain yet electric embrace of their new beginning. It was the start of a story that could rival even the most scandalous tales of Eldoria's history, complete with drama, romance, and, of course, a sprinkle of political intrigue that would make even Shakespeare raise an eyebrow. Cassian's grip tightened around Isolde's fingers, a silent promise echoing between them. With every heartbeat, the weight of trust shone brighter than any jewel in the royal crown. They had stripped away the masks of deceit that adorned the faces of those closest to them, revealing the stark reality of betrayal hiding beneath the surface. Like a detective in a gritty crime film, they pieced together the puzzle of shadows that danced in the corners of Eldoria, identifying foes disguised as allies. The smell of damp earth and freshly turned soil swirled around them, a reminder that while they had unearthed the secrets of others, they too were prepared to dig into the earth of their own hearts, seeking the truth and strength buried within. Yes, it had taken a lot of guts, but what was life without a little thrill, a little chaos, and a hearty side of love? Standing beneath the vast sky, Isolde couldn't ignore the irony that love, the fragile thread binding them, was stronger than the dark machinations that sought to tear them apart. With each passing moment, the past receded, its whispers fading like echoes in a cavern. Yet, a certain tension still clung to the air, thick as fog on a winter's morn. The enemies they had exposed were still at large, lurking like hungry wolves in the shadows, and the very idea made her skin prickle. But instead of dread, there was fire, an undeniable urge to confront the challenges head-on, to rise as a united front against those who sought to ruin them. In the world of courtly politics, where people spoke in riddles and half-truths, their love became a beacon, illuminating the darkness and whispering promises of victory. With a hearty laugh that broke the dawn's stillness, Cassian nudged Isolde playfully, teasing her silver-streaked hair, which danced in the morning breeze. "No more sneaking around in the shadows, my lady," he declared, a grin splitting his face wide enough to make the gallant knights envious. There was something infectious about their banter, a spark that set the air alight as they spun tales of what their future could look like. imagine hosting extravagant banquets filled with laughter, fresh bread, and roasted meat that danced in the air with a welcoming scent, and none of that bureaucratic nonsense. Isolde added with a twinkle in her eye, drawing an exaggerated groan from Cassian as he clutched his heart dramatically. They both knew the road ahead would be fraught with peril, but by wielding their love like a sword, they could carve a path through uncertainty and towards a vision that was wholly theirs. As the sun climbed higher, casting deep shadows and warm glows across the landscape, Isolde and Cassian took a step forward together, the world expanding before them. They'd made their vows amid betrayal, promising not just loyalty, but a fierce alliance against the tides of adversity. They were on a precipice, peering into a chasm filled with ambition, hope, and the gnashing teeth of an uncertain future. Could their union truly change the fate of Eldoria? With a shared glance, they knew they weren't just stepping into the dawn. They were launching themselves into a journey worthy of poetry, one where love and courage danced hand in hand, ready to script a new chapter for themselves and their land. After all, in a world filled with whispers in the dark, they'd found their light, and it was unquenchable in the ancient, bustling city of Illyria, where cobblestone streets echoed with the laughter of children, and the rich scent of roasting lamb danced through the air. A young knight named Eric found himself ensnared by the charms of Alara. A noblewoman with auburn hair cascading like a waterfall of fire. They met in the grand courtyard, surrounded by the kaleidoscope of life, flamboyant jester antics, merchants hawking their wares, and the distant clanging of blacksmiths hammering destiny into blades. With every stolen glance, their hearts thumped like war drums, revealing a connection that set the world ablaze, as if they were the only two souls amidst a cast of thousands. Yet, despite the promise of eternal love whispered between them, a looming darkness hid in the shadows like a disgruntled cat waiting to pounce on an unsuspecting mouse. Oh, the irony of forging a vow meant to last through ages, when just beyond the walls, envy and ambition lurked, sharpening their claws in the night air like eager suitors waiting for their chance to strike. Eric, wielding his lance with the fervor of a young colt eager to gallop, embarked on a noble quest to protect his beloved Illyria from marauding invaders. A foreboding force creeping toward their kingdom like a bad sequel nobody wanted to see. With each stride of his gallant steed, the wind sang through his hair, carrying with it the scent of musty armor and the distant aroma of Alara's lavender soap, a blend that made his heart race faster than a bard's exaggerated tale at a tavern. As he rode away, determination surged within him, fueling his belief in heroism and sacrifice, like a caffeinated morning when one realizes it's Monday and they forgot to prepare. Little did he know, however, that his absence was like an open invitation for more than just his foes. Sweet, sweet betrayal was ready to crash the party like an uninvited relative with a flair for chaos. How narrow the line between bravery and folly when a good knight leaves his lady unguarded in a world bursting at the seams with treachery. Meanwhile, back in the lavish halls of her family estate, Alara sat poised, draped in silks shimmering like the surface of a moonlit lake, a picture of grace. Yet her heart thudded with the apprehension of the unknown. The vivid colors of her surroundings contrasted harshly with the growing shadows of doubt that curled like smoke around her mind, whispering insidious thoughts. Could a promise made in the glow of love's brilliance withstand the chilling winds of solitude and envy? With her enchanting charms and wit sharper than any knight's sword, Alara held court in the parlor, where cold laughter often disguised warm daggers, a gathering of peers who were less allies and more rivals in the game of life. Underneath the smiles, the air thickened with tension, as secrets flitted about like moths drawn to a flickering flame, hungry to ignite the kindling of betrayal lurking dangerously close. As days turned into long, agonizing nights, Alara learned that trust is a fragile glass ornament, easily shattered when adversity strikes as quietly as a sniper in an epic battle. Invaders were not the only menace creeping toward Illyria. The poisoned whispers of jealousy from desolate hearts around her began to seep through the cracks of their once unbreakable vow. The clang of steel in Eric's absence echoed just as loudly as the unkind words that cut her deeper than any blade, a reminder that power often holds a more treacherous allure than romantic promises. Each laughter-filled gathering became a theater of irony, as she was paraded like a prized stallion by the very individuals who would stab her in the back, given the chance. The realization unfurled inside her. Not all who wear smiles are friends, and not every knight in shining armor is without their own shadows. Unbeknownst to Eric, as he galloped through fields of wildflowers blooming defiantly against the backdrop of impending doom, Alara was left to face the bitter truth that love alone cannot conquer the mounting treachery of an unforgiving world. When the heart longs for the one it cherishes, it's all too easy to misinterpret shadows as mere outlines of love's potential. But betrayal is like that dessert that looks delicious, but tastes like disappointment, sugary on the surface, yet void of any real substance. As her fingers absently trace the ring they exchanged, optimism tethered together with a thin, glimmering bond, Alara knew the fragile nature of their vow was about to be tested like a pastry at a royal banquet. The battlefield of hearts was about to witness a collision wherein love and envy would clash ferociously, crafting a narrative woven with threads of passion and punctured by the cruel fangs of betrayal. And in that heart-stopping moment, amidst the turmoil that seemed inevitable, a spark of hope flickered, reminding us all that redemption could rise from even the shrapnel of shattered promises. As the sun dipped below the ancient stone walls of Elysium, casting long shadows that danced like restless spirits, Alara found herself wandering the vast garden, her thoughts tangled in a web of uncertainty. With fragrant jasmine swirling around her, she felt the weight of Eric's absence pressing down like a heavy cloak. It was then that the voice of Lysandra, a sly sorceress with the charm of a silver-tongued fox, slithered into her mind. "Power, wealth, and freedom, my dear Alara," she purred, her words dripping with honeyed temptation. The very air vibrated with the promise of something more, the thrill of danger wrapped in the sparkle of allure. And Alara couldn't help but be intrigued, even as a shroud of guilt settled over her heart like a thick fog lingering over a lost city. Lysandra appeared before her, a vision clad in velvety midnight blue, her smile both enchanting and disquieting. "What good is love if it chains you down?" she whispered, her eyes glinting with mischief, igniting a flicker of rebellion within Alara's heart. The garden, with its vibrant greens and the soft buzz of insects serenading the twilight, seemed to sway under the weight of the sorceress's intoxicating influence. Each word from Lysandra ignited that persistent itch of yearning, the kind that made Alara feel like she was indulging in forbidden fruit, sweet but dangerously spiked. Just like that, the laughter of friends celebrating the night's feast drifted away, replaced by the electric tension that hummed between the two women, the air thickening with unspoken secrets and hidden desires. Caught in this seductive web, Alara's thoughts spiraled with every glance cast toward the ululating shadows of her choices. Eric had promised her the world, a bond forged in trust and passion. Yet here was Lysandra, dangling the keys to a kingdom shimmering with riches and unchecked ambition. "Why settle for the mundane when you can soar?" echoed in her ears, a siren's call that resonated with every insecurity lurking beneath her surface. The memories of shared laughter with Eric at the moonlit lake felt like distant echoes, softly taunting her with remnants of a simpler love. Yet the allure of power, oh, how it shimmered like a brand new smartphone on a fresh Friday morning, sparked an inner rebellion that thrilled and frightened her all at once. Under the bewitching light of the crescent moon, Alara's heart pulsed with conflicting rhythms, the fundamental tug-of-war between loyalty and desire rippling through her. Each clandestine meeting with Lysandra felt like stepping into a forbidden realm, where the laws of loyalty bent and twisted like a strip of old rubber. They would spin wild tales and roll their eyes at the mundane duties of life, their laughter echoing in the stillness like a wolf's howl in the night. The taste of sweetness mixed with danger lingered on Alara's tongue, intoxicating and delicious, a reminder that every time she chose the seductive path, she risked unraveling the very fabric of her heart. Yet each heated whisper from Lysandra chipped away at her resolve, each promise of power dragging her closer to a place where she would lose herself, but perhaps gain everything she thought she desired. And so, Alara stood at the precipice of her truth, gazing into the shimmering abyss of possibility. The stakes couldn't be clearer. Win a perilous kind of ambition, or cling to the warmth of true love, as steady and unyielding as a knight in shining armor. Fragments of Eric's laughter swirled around her like the golden autumn leaves that fell amidst the damp earth. The decision loomed large, grotesque, yet undeniably exhilarating. She was torn, and for the first time, she sensed that the serpent's whisper could finally lead her to discover who she truly was beneath the layers of expectation and fear. With every pulse of her heart, she realized that this moment of choice wasn't just about power or love. It was about claiming her own fate in a world where the shadows danced and the light was often deceiving. As Eric rode back into the kingdom, the familiar wooden gates bore an unsettling resemblance to the grim faces of his long-lost friends. The rich aroma of freshly baked bread wafted through the air like a cruel reminder of home, amidst the stench of smoke and fear that clung to the streets. In the distance, the sharp clang of swords and the frantic cries of women echoed ominously, signaling the chaos that had enveloped his realm. His heart, once a sturdy fortress, now felt like a shattered piece of glass, each shard reflecting a myriad of betrayals. The bright banners flying over the castle flickered unsettlingly, like lies whispered in the shadows, hinting at disaster both within and without the kingdom's beleaguered walls. Then came the moment of revelation, a rustle, a sigh, and the truth spilled out like a gruesome painting cast in too much light. Alara, his once beloved, the radiant flower in his garden of hope, had entwined her life with another, a betrayal that hit harder than the sharpest arrow to the heart. The stark images flashed through Eric's mind, sharper than any blade he wielded. Stolen kisses, furtive glances, each memory now a dagger twisting in his soul. The laughter they shared rang hollow, mocking him while the winds screamed of treachery, fueled by heartbreak thick enough to choke on. Eric's fury bubbled like a cauldron on the verge of boiling over. Every ounce of vengeance pushing him toward that inevitable confrontation with Lysandra, the mistress of darkness herself, stepping onto that battlefield of shattered trust. Eric found Lysandra waiting, her presence more intoxicating than a goblet of spiced wine, but far more deadly. The air crackled with tension, charged with magic, laced with the bitterness of abandoned dreams. "Ah, the noble knight returns," she purred, her voice dripping with irony, her eyes glinting like stars that had lost their way. Rage surged within him, and with each step forward, the earth seemed to tremble, as though it too anticipated the clash. But the moment he crossed into her realm, the world twisted, shadows danced, and darkness coiled around him like a serpent, ready to strike. The palpable threat gnawing at his very bones. As his senses reeled, Eric found himself gripped by panic. Darkness enveloped him like a suffocating shroud, blurring the edges of reality. And just when he thought despair would swallow him whole, the flicker of Alara's resolve pierced through the gloom. A candle's ember fighting against the wind, torn between her love and the seductive pull of power, offering her safety and influence. The weight of her decision hung in the air thicker than a miasma. Eric's heart pounded a desperate beat, each thump echoing the wish that he could somehow pluck the chains from her spirit and restore the warmth of their shared laughter. Yet there she stood, paralyzed by a choice that would seal their fates. Love warring against the seductive allure of the sorceress's dark promise. In that breathless pause, the kingdom held its collective breath, caught in the web of deceit spun by Lysandra. The twisted irony hung in the air, a battle waged not just for land or glory, but for the very soul of the realm, the essence of love tangled in the dark tapestry of betrayal, with tension so thick it could be cut with a dull knife. Eric felt the stakes rise higher than the tallest tower of the castle, and his resolve stiffened with it. This wasn't merely a confrontation with magic. It was a reckoning, a chance to tear apart that web and reveal the truth beneath, even if it meant facing down the very shadows of his own heart. And so, amidst the swirling chaos, two hearts dangled by threads so fine destiny awaited, with the hilt of a sword quivering in his grip and the scent of betrayal fresh in his nostrils. The air crackled with tension as Eric faced off against Lysandra beneath the stormy skies, the dark clouds swirling ominously above like a gathering audience. The sorceress stood tall and menacing, her eyes burning with flickering flames, hair whipping about her shoulders as if caught in a tempest of her own making. Each gesture unleashed a blast of magic, reminiscent of some wild cartoon character hurling fireballs. Except this wasn't a Saturday morning cartoon. This was real life, and the stakes were dire. Eric, clad in armor that gleamed with remnants of hope, felt the weight of despair pressing against him like 1,000 bricks. Yet, in the corner of his eye, he spotted Alara, readying herself for her own daring rescue. Might she really be the wild card that could shift the tide in this chaotic battle? Alara's heart raced as she remembered the secret she had been harboring. Her past betrayal had led them into this harrowing conflict. It felt like a lead balloon in her stomach, heavy and painful, but she couldn't afford to dwell on it now. Adrenaline pumped through her veins, sharpening her senses. She could smell the acrid scent of charred earth and hear the crack of lightning splintering the air like a poorly landed punchline. With a swift motion, she dashed forward, harnessing her own nascent powers, weaving through arcs of destructive energy, as if she were dancing in the middle of a frenzied mosh pit at a rock concert. Behind her, the faint echoes of her old regrets nagged. But what mattered now was the fiery determination flickering within her chest. She would save Eric, or die trying, and heaven help her. She could hear that familiar battle theme in her head, urging her on. In a moment that seemed to stretch for eternity, Alara hurled herself between Eric and Lysandra, shoving aside her own fears with the force of an avalanche. "Not today, witch," she shouted, and the words tasted like iron on her tongue as Lysandra's spell cracked like thunder and arced towards Eric. Alara lifted her hands, summoning her own magic, which surged through her like a river bursting a dam. There was a sweet, sickening scent of ozone as the two magical forces collided in an explosion of light and sound, a spectacle akin to fireworks on the 4th of July. Only much messier, flesh sizzling, and a clatter of debris told her just how high the stakes had climbed. Threads of fate hung by a fraying thread, and they were hanging on for dear life. With a final surge of strength, Alara felt herself breaking through the vortex of darkness that Lysandra spun around them, channeling the radiant warmth of hope that seemed nearly lost. Lysandra's piercing gaze faltered for just a flicker before Eric lunged, sword singing through the air like a banshee in anguish as he struck true, severing the sorceress's grip on reality. The sudden silence that fell was as deafening as the prior chaos. No crackling magic, no thunderous roars, just Alara's heavy breathing and the faint hiss of embers cooling against the evening breeze. But salvation was never free, and as Lysandra crumbled into dust, Alara crumpled to her knees, exhaustion washing over her like a tidal wave. It was a bittersweet victory. The kingdom saved, but at the cost of their very souls, each of them marked by the battle in ways more profound than mere scars. As the dust settled and they surveyed the wreckage of the battlefield, a dark cloud loomed over the trio. The weight of their shared past bore down like a cresting storm. Eric turned to Alara, eyes searching for the warmth they once shared, but all he found was a reflection of anguish and uncertainties. "What now?" he asked quietly, his voice hoarse, feeling like a misplaced hero in a badly written script. Alara opened her mouth, the harsh truth bubbling up like bad soda. What had they really gained? With a shared glance, all illusions shattered. They'd just won a massive showdown. But it felt like the real struggle had only just begun, leaving them stranded in a reality full of broken promises and the daunting path toward redemption. In the clamor of a world teetering on the brink of chaos, Eric and Alara emerged from the shadows of their choices, each scar deeper than a winter frostbite. The air around them buzzed with tension, as the remnants of a storm, both tangible and emotional, swirled like fallen leaves caught in a whirlwind. They stood amongst the ruins of their past lives, charred wood, broken pottery, and the echoes of whispered betrayals hung like a smog over Illyria. But as the sun broke through the clouds, the promise of a new dawn teased them with hope, urging them to mend what had been shattered into a million sharp pieces on the stone-cold ground below. In the depths of their despair, they could sense the faint pulse of possibility, like the unassuming heartbeat of a seed waiting to sprout beneath the frost. With each trudging step towards reconciliation, Eric and Alara wielded the tools of honesty and forgiveness like a blacksmith forging steel. They breathed in the brisk autumn air crisp, but not without the heavy scent of singed regret and damp earth after the rain. "Let's face the music," Eric said, half joking, rubbing the back of his neck, as if he could erase the weight of the world from his shoulders like smudged ink on parchment. Alara, her eyes glinting with a mixture of fire and empathy, replied with a wry smile, "As long as it's not off-key, I'm game." Together, they ventured forth, prepared to dismantle the walls they had erected, one brick of dishonesty at a time. As days turned into weeks, the once desolate halls of their hearts began to echo with laughter, a sound they both recalled, but had not heard in far too long. Moments were spent recalling tales of old, like an episode of their favorite adventure series, where heroes faced insurmountable odds, but thrived on camaraderie and love. Each shared story was a balm, soothing the jagged memories of betrayal and hurt that had lurked in every corner waiting to ambush their fragile truce. No longer were they two warriors on opposite sides of a battlefield, but survivors amidst the ruins of their past lives, crafting a new narrative replete with laughter, love, and a touch of righteous mischief. As they slowly rebuilt, even the gnarled trees outside their window seemed to lean in closer, intrigued by the tender bond rekindling within those walls. But peace, as they quickly learned, was not without its challenges. The ghosts of their past danced mockingly in the corners, whispering sweet nothings of dissent, as if they held a grudge against the very notion of hope. Eric found himself grappling with self-doubt, with the flames of betrayal rekindle, consuming the fragile trust they'd painstakingly rebuilt. Meanwhile, Alara faced her own demons, one of which was a pesky little voice that croaked, "You knew better, didn't you?" They found solace in moments shared, cooking together, the aroma of sizzling herbs lifting their spirits as they literally boiled away part of their tumultuous history like a pot of stubborn stew. Amidst attempts at culinary greatness, laughter bubbled over like an errant pot, cleansing the shadows even the most stubborn doubts couldn't keep at bay. In the end, the lessons they learned shone brighter than any jeweled crown of their former lives. They had not just survived a storm, they had danced in the rain, soaking wet but exhilarated, like kids splashing in muddy puddles, free and unencumbered. The people of Illyria began to notice the shift to peaceful whispers replaced the harsh clang of swords, as if the village itself sighed in relief at the revival of hearts reborn from ashes. Together, Eric and Alara forged a new path, one where trust stood as a strong anchor, and love fluttered like the banners of a truly united realm. And so, as they strode into the sunset, hand in hand, the horizon lit like a scene from an epic saga. They knew that even in stories marked by betrayal, redemption was not just a possibility, it was their new reality. In the vibrant heart of Lysoria, where the air hung thick with the scent of roasted chestnuts, and the distant sound of laughter echoed through the winding streets, Alana felt the weight of her noble lineage press heavily upon her delicate shoulders. Draped in silks that whispered tales of opulence, she stood at the grand balcony of her family's estate, gazing down at the chaotic tapestry of the marketplace below. Here was a world alive with the scents of spices and spices of sweat, a stark contrast to the perfumed confines of her gilded cage. Yet her heart throbbed for a different rhythm, one that pulsed from the shadowy corners of the alleyways, a heart she had sworn to keep close, yet hidden, the heart of Cedric, the rogue who could pick a pocket faster than most could get a drink at the tavern. Oh, Lysoria was a city of contrasts, and she nestled carefully between them, a fine silk thread caught in a hurricane of expectations and deceitful whispers. Cedric, grinning like a fox in a henhouse, maneuvered through the narrow streets with a grace that could rival the finest courtiers, albeit with a much more scruffy ensemble. His fingers were nimble, dancing expertly over unsuspecting souls to relieve them of their excess coin. Yet, when he caught sight of Alana, his heart did a flip that would make a jester proud. What began as a game of cat and mouse soon morphed into something altogether sweeter. a dangerous game of love played out under the cover of darkness, where the moonlight became their only witness. The air crackled with stolen sighs and promises wrapped in secrecy, filled with the sweet tang of adrenaline that surged through Cedric's veins every time he stole away to meet her, away from the clutches of the city's watchful eyes. Yet behind his playful bravado lurked a storm, the looming specter of their worlds colliding cast a long shadow over their moonlit moments, thickening the air with tension and unspoken fears. On this fateful night, with stars glittering like the finest jewels scattered across the deep darkness, Alana and Cedric swore an oath that sent shivers down their spines. They huddled close beneath the sprawling branches of an ancient oak, the rough bark scraping against Alana's arm, invigorating her with the raw pulse of nature that she craved. Their laughter mingled with the hooting of an owl nearby, as they spoke dreams in hushed tones, dreams escaped from the confines of reality, dreams that seemed as fragile as the petals of the night-blooming jasmine surrounding them, yet as sweet as their declarations of love felt. A heavy unease tugged at Cedric. He could sense it, the incoming storm of reality that threatened to tear their fragile happiness to shreds. Much like a bad sequel to a beloved movie franchise, just as whispers of intrigue floated through the air like the delicious aroma of stew from a nearby tavern. Threats from their respective worlds were ever present. Alana knew the stakes of her position, where her every move was monitored, and her value measured by the weight of her father's ambitions. A union of power and prestige that didn't account for the wild spirit of a street rat who could charm a crowd but would never fit into her world. Meanwhile, Cedric clung to the worst-kept secret in the city, his past entanglements with thieves who would think nothing of turning on each other like rabid dogs if it meant earning a quick coin. The truth was, while they dipped into love's sweet nectar, the bitter aftertaste of deception simmered just beneath the surface, waiting for the moment to rise like a poorly cooked souffle and ruin the banquet in grand fashion. Could their hearts withstand the chaos that was inevitably unfolding around them? Or would these veiled intentions pull them asunder as the night deepened and the city glimmered with a million hidden dangers? One truth burned bright and clear amidst the smoke and mirrors. The power of love often lay wrapped in shadows, with deception lurking just a breath away. Alana and Cedric navigated this perilous dance, buoyed by youthful passion, yet suffocated by the weight of their secrets. Perhaps it was the ache of yearning, or the bitter tang of hidden fears that filled their chests as they parted company under the waning moon. Lovers entwined in the beautiful mess of life, armed with nothing but their reckless hearts and a smirk aimed at the universe. This was their story, rich and textured like a well-worn tapestry. Little did they know, however, that the threads of their intertwined lives would soon unravel in ways that would echo through the very streets they loved, reshaping their destinies forever. In a garden bathed in moonlight, where the fragrant blooms of jasmine mingled with the cool night air, Alana and Cedric stole precious moments away from the prying eyes of the world. Their hearts raced like wild stallions, fueled by the intoxicating thrill of forbidden love. Alana, with her golden curls glinting under the silvery light, felt as though the universe had conspired to bring her closer to Cedric, whose deep-set eyes sparkled with mischief and a touch of danger. Yet, amid their passionate whispers, a heavy shadow loomed. Alana's father, Baron Mortimer, was weaving a tapestry of alliances, one that included a pampered nobleman whose appetite for wealth could rival that of an insatiable dragon. Little did they realize their budding romance was about to be swallowed by a storm of deceit lurking just beyond the veil of the starry sky. With each stolen meeting, the tension between desire and duty crackled like a summer storm. Cedric, fumbling with words in a voice that could charm angels and rouse demons, found himself hopelessly drawn to Alana's laughter, which rang like sweet music amidst the drudgery of court politics. But fate had a wicked sense of humor. He had unwittingly become a pawn in a sinister game concocted by his own scheming relatives, who sought to snatch a legendary artifact that belonged to Alana's family. The artifact, a shimmering heirloom that gleamed like the envy of 1,000 pearls, was rumored to hold a power that could elevate their humble status, and they expected Cedric to do the dirty work with the finesse of a cat burglar and the charm of a villain in an old melodrama. It was clear, in this world of deception, the line between love and treachery blurred like ink running on wet parchment. Days turned into nights, and the very walls of Alana's home seemed to close in around her, adorned with opulent decor that felt more like a gilded cage than a place of refuge. The scent of roses suffocated her, sweet yet cloying, like an uninvited guest that overstays its welcome. Meanwhile, Cedric faced a moral quagmire as slippery as a greased pig. Should he betray the girl who had ignited a fire in his heart, or rescue his own family from financial ruin? He often envisioned sprinting away from it all, not unlike a dashing hero from a classic romance flick, scooping Alana up into a gallant escape. But alas, reality was more insidious. With every glance they exchanged, the danger followed, lurking just beyond the garden's hedgerows, like a shape-shifting creature of the night. As their rendezvous grew more perilous, whispers of Alana's impending betrothal filled every corner of the castle. a cacophony that gnawed at Cedric's resolve. During one moonlit escape, Alana's breath quickened as she divulged the news. A suitor so wealthy he could buy entire kingdoms with a mere flick of his wrist had claimed her father's favor. The irony was not lost on Cedric. She was being married off, while he was caught plundering the very heart of her family's legacy. It felt like a plot twist straight from a soap opera, and Cedric could almost hear the suspenseful music playing in the background. Dun dun dun. The realization hung like dark clouds, threatening to drown the warmth blossoming between them in cold disillusionment. And both knew they'd have to make a heartbreaking choice soon. One that could send ripples through their lives like stones tossed into a still pond. In the end, the weight of choice bore down on them with the gravity of 1,000 fallen warriors. There, under the canopy of stars that had witnessed their love's inception, Cedric grasped Alana's hands, his heart pounding like the drums of war. He could feel her tremble, the softness of her skin against his, a reminder of what they stood to lose. And just as life had sharpened the edges of their romance, it threatened to shatter it. Tools in hand, their love on the brink of oblivion. With a bittersweet resolve, they shared a final look, eyes locking in a silent pact, a promise of an uncertain future, a delicate flower born amidst the shadows of deceit, daring to bloom despite the encroaching darkness. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting shadows long and foreboding, Alana found herself standing on the precipice of a life-altering decision. The sweet scent of blooming jasmine filled the air, intertwining with the heavier aroma of impending rain, a fitting backdrop for her turmoil. Her heart wrestled with loyalty to her father, a man of iron-fisted principles who saw her as a pawn in his grand game, and the fiery passion she felt for Cedric, a man with laughter in his eyes and dreams that soared like the evening larks. How do you weigh love against duty? She pondered aloud, her voice a mere whisper to the rustling leaves. When the scale tips toward deception, it was a predicament more twisted than a pretzel at a fair, and Alana was dizzy with the realization that every path thrummed with danger, yet led away from her truth. Across town, Cedric paced like a caged lion, heart racing as the weight of his decisions pressed down like a thick fog. The joyful peals of laughter floated through the dilapidated tavern as festival goers began to anticipate the revelry of the coming days. But all he could hear were the clanking chains of his own conscience. Here he stood, a man on the verge of tossing aside everything he cherished for a chance at freedom, the glimmer of which danced just beyond his reach like a mirage. Am I truly willing to sacrifice love for a fleeting taste of freedom? He mused, biting back the bitterness that accompanied his thoughts. The air, thick with the scent of roasted meats and cheap ale, felt suffocating now, much like the conundrum of his heart-shaking choices swirling around him, dangerously intoxicating, yet laden with regret. With heavy hearts, Alana and Cedric made the impossible decision to part ways, each step away feeling like a dagger to the soul. The festival's exuberance grew like a wildfire as they wandered in opposite directions, the world bustling around them, completely oblivious to their sorrow. The vibrant colors of banners flapping in the breeze contrasted sharply with the gray clouds gathering overhead, much like the irony of their doomed love story. What a world, Cedric scoffed under his breath, watching couples twirl in blissful ignorance, as if the fates didn't have a wicked sense of humor that left him with a gaping ache in his chest. Alana's laughter echoed in his mind, a haunting melody that threatened to unravel his very being. It was a cruel joke that cast them as mere participants in a tragic comedy, one they never auditioned for. But festivity has a way of interjecting itself into the gloomiest of tales. And as the annual festival neared its peak, fate took a mischievous turn. Underneath the glittering lanterns and the intoxicating scent of spiced wine, the fabric of their stories began to weave together anew. Alana, adorned in a gown of sapphire silk that swayed like water under moonlight, caught a glimpse of Cedric among the throng, his face a mix of disbelief and relief, like he'd stumbled into a pop culture flash mob demanding happy endings. As their eyes locked, the boundaries of their worlds, once defined by loyalty and betrayal, blurred into a single heartbeat. The laughter, the music, the aroma of sweets swirling in the air stirred something deep within them, igniting an inexplicable hope, like a phoenix rising from ashes, insatiably daring the fates to intervene once more. And so, like a scene ripped straight from the pages of a romance novel, where destiny decided to drop the plot twist right into their laps, Alana and Cedric found themselves drawn together amid the chaotic tapestry of the festival. Yet the stakes were higher than a carnival ride gone wrong, and every choice still loomed heavy in their hearts. The intoxication of their reunions was laced with the bittersweet realities they could no longer ignore. Yet they felt like young lovers granted one last wish before the curtain fell, with a shared glance that spoke volumes, words unspoken, but understood in their very marrow. They took a step closer, ready to embrace both the electric thrill of love and the gnawing fear of the unknown. It was an awkward dance of emotion, a foot-stomping, heart-racing waltz that set the stage for the uncertainties that lay ahead, binding their fates with threads of lingering hope and veiled intentions in a world steeped in deception. under the radiant glow of thousands of lanterns swaying in the evening breeze, the festival of Lysoria flared to life, draping the city in vibrant colors and intoxicating aromas of roasted meats and spiced wines. Laughter and merriment echoed through the bustling streets, where performers juggled fire and dancers swirled in elaborate costumes. Yet, beneath this festive veneer lay a heart of chaos, as Cedric, roguish and determined, prepared for a daring heist amid the clamorous revelry. His hands trembled with excitement, not from fear of capture, but from the thrill of defying the odds. Yet fate, as unwieldy as a drunken jester, had other plans. The scent of jasmine filled the air, masking the bitterness of betrayal that clung to him like an unwelcome shadow as he set his scheme into motion, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing just around the corner. Meanwhile, Alana, a whirlwind of fervor and apprehension, navigated the colorful chaos, her heart pounding with the urgency of 1,000 wild horses. She had stumbled upon the blueprints of Cedric's audacious plan, corralled away like a secret love letter whispering of hidden treasures, and the kind of love that could topple kingdoms. With each fleeting glance, the city around her blurred into a tapestry of vibrant celebrations. But all she could see was Cedric's fate dangling in the balance. As her father's guards, brutish and sharp-eyed, prowled through the throngs, she could almost smell the iron of their weapons as they gleamed in the flickering torchlight. Irony seeped into her thoughts. The very guardians meant to protect her were now the hounds chasing her heart, and she pushed herself forward, ready to confront the storm for the sake of the man she loved. Racing through fairy lights and orchestrated disorder, Alana finally spotted Cedric at the heart of his elaborate scheme. His dark hair tousled, eyes gleaming with mischief. But as soon as their eyes met, the destined encounter morphed into something heavier. A palpable tension hung between them, a mix of exhilaration and impending doom. "What in the goddess' name are you doing?" she hissed, urgency dripping like sweat from their brows as she glanced around for her father's guards. The laughter of children and the shrill cries of traveling merchants faded into a deafening silence, as if the universe held its breath, afraid to disrupt the fragile moment. Each word exchanged was laden with the weight of loyalty and sacrifice, and beneath it all lay secrets that could either unite or shatter them both. Just as Cedric opened his mouth to explain, the jagged shouts of the guards pierced the air like arrows finding their mark. Alana's stomach dropped, for in this twisted realm of deception and desire, the stakes had never been higher. Cedric grabbed her hand, the warmth of his touch a bittersweet reminder of what they risked losing. Love turned to ash in the roaring flames of conflict. He pulled her close just as the guards descended, their armor clinking like ominous bells, ready to toll for love's demise. With each heartbeat, Alana felt the world narrow. The chaos of celebration turned to the grim sound of steel clashing against steel, echoing the sacrifice they would have to make for their freedom. In that harrowing moment, choices stained with desperation emerged, echoing louder than any festival fireworks. As Cedric prepared for a fight that could reverberate through their destiny, Alana felt drawn to him, knowing that love could hold them together or tear them apart. "Are you ready to gamble everything for a future we might never see?" she asked, a teasing fire lighting her eyes despite the grim reality around them. It was then that they realized that in a world built on veiled intentions, loyalty and sacrifice would shape their fates more than any military might or royal decree. And just like in a cinematic climax, with a storm brewing at their backs, they stood together, defiant, passionate, and ready to face whatever darkness awaited, if only it meant they could carve out a place in the chaos for their blossoming love. The air hung heavy with the scent of charred wood and spilled secrets, remnants of the chaos that had just unfolded. Alana stood amidst the wreckage, her heart racing like a runaway horse. The world felt unsteady underfoot, as if the very ground beneath her had been stripped away, leaving only emotional rubble. Cedric approached, his eyes glinting like shards of broken glass in the dim light, revealing both vulnerability and an ironclad resolve. Their gazes locked, and in that moment, all deceptions withered under the weight of truth, like shadows retreating at dawn. Together, they began to sift through the debris, not just the physical remnants, but the tangled threads of their hearts. Alana reached out, brushing her fingers against a splintered beam, a metaphor for the walls they'd both built around themselves. "Cedric, it's time we stop acting like we're auditioning for a reality show where no one wins," she said, a half smile trying to break through her distress. Cedric chuckled, his laughter a warm breeze that sliced through the grim atmosphere. They tossed aside the masks they'd worn flimsy enough to fool themselves, and faced the raw, bitten reality of their affection for one another. Stark and unvarnished, like a forgotten corner of an attic. With their hearts bared, Alana and Cedric plotted their next steps, a sweet rebellion laced with a touch of chivalry. They scribbled wild plans on fragments of paper, ink smeared with determination and passion, as if conjuring a spell to combat the dreaded disapproval of their families. "We can do this," Cedric insisted, his voice steady despite the rumble of uncertainty that lay just beneath. The thrill of their newfound clarity electrified Alana. It felt like being struck by a bolt of lightning. But instead of fearing the storm, she reveled in the wildness of it all. To love boldly was their final act of defiance, and rebellion had never been more intoxicating. The day arrived when they would lay their truths at the feet of their families, a cacophony of emotions swirling around them like a tempest. In the living room, Alana could almost smell the cologne of old grievances mixed with the tangy undertones of future conflicts. Cedric took her hand, his grip steady as a rock, as they faced the judgments that awaited them, fortified by their shared laughter and tears. Okay, folks, it's not a soap opera, but it sure feels like one, he quipped, lightening the tension as they prepared to unveil the reality of their love. In that moment, humor wove through the air like music, a temporary shield against the looming storm of familial disappointment. As the bitter truth unraveled, acceptance bloomed like wildflowers through cracked pavement. Alana and Cedric revealed not only their feelings, but the sincere intent behind them, and it felt like a cleansing rain had washed away years of discoloration and resentment. Laughter and tears mingled, a bizarre accompaniment to the unfolding drama, where love triumphed amid surprise hugs and light-hearted jabs. You two are about as subtle as a marching band in a library, someone quipped, eliciting chuckles that echoed like warm sunlight in a dreary room. And in the aftermath, as the rubble of old ways lay scattered around them, Alana and Cedric dared to dream of a fresh beginning, hand in hand, ready to take on their new world together. Picture, if you will, the verdant expanse of Eldoria, where the rolling hills clash with the sapphire sky to create a canvas so picturesque it could make a painter weep. But beneath this beauty, like the fraying curtain of a once grand opera house, lies a fierce rivalry between the Valyrians and the Ashfords. These noble houses are as entangled in their feud as a pair of lovers caught in a The Trage to Glory rom-com, full of misunderstandings and painful sacrifices. Alara Valyrian, with hair as dark as a raven's wing, and eyes that sparkled like the treasures of a sunken pirate ship, often found herself daydreaming by the window, her heart entangled in the forbidden romance blooming in her soul. Meanwhile, from the shadowed grove where the Ashford knights trained, Cedric Ashford, handsome as a knight in shining armor, but much less likely to slay dragons, couldn't help but long for the gentle touch of the Valyrian maiden's hand, even if it meant risking his neck, or worse, his family's honor. Their love was a delicate dance performed at a grand ball, where no one could hear the music over the clamor of swords clashing, nobles shouting, and oh yes, secrets brewing darker than the strongest mug of ale. As winter whispered its chilling presence across Eldoria, snowflakes glittered like diamonds under the moonlight, reminding Alara and Cedric of the fragile beauty of what they shared. With every visit exchanged in the dead of the night, the couple plotted to mend the frayed bonds of their kin through the miraculous power of love. A plan so noble it felt like Diana, Prince, dusting off her lasso, ready to lasso peace. However, like all good plans, it came with a hefty dose of irony sprinkled in. After all, how could love blossom in a garden of bitterness and bloodshed? Every stolen kiss tasted both sweet and sour, with destiny's cruel hand playing the all too familiar antagonistic role in their unfolding tale. But lo and behold, dark secrets loomed like ominous clouds above their heads, threatening to rain down chaos when all they wished for was a sunny future. Whispers of betrayals long buried began to surface, fanning the flames of distrust, as if someone had shot a flaming arrow right through the festive feel of their love saga. Acquaintances turned foes, and old grievances regarded like artifacts in dusty attics began to claw their way back into the light. Cedric heard snickers in tabernas that used to echo with songs of their youth. Even the tavern keeper seemed to carry news faster than the royal couriers could. Each rumor felt like a dagger plunged deeper into Cedric's heart, blurring the lines between right and wrong as their families. Would they allow the shouts of blood feuds to drown out the whispers of love so tender? It could stir even the gods to pity. As the day of reckoning approached like a storm cloud building on the horizon, Alara and Cedric found solace beneath the ancient willow tree, their secret sanctuary, where laughter was akin to the joyous sounds of a well-rehearsed orchestral piece, despite the surrounding discord. Its thick, gnarled branches wrapped around them like a protective embrace, offering a moment of protection, albeit a fleeting one, from the reality of their lives outside its woven embrace. They poured their fears into the roots, while nature lent an ear to their treacherous hopes. The tree rustled gently, as if nodding its wisdom. Each heartbeat reminded them that love, while powerful, comes with the baggage of family legacies fighting against the tide. And at any moment, those bags could burst open to spill their secrets across the cobbled streets of Eldoria. And yet, with a laugh reminiscent of hands solo in a bind, Cedric claimed, "Fear not, my love. We shall outsmart the cosmos and make history together." Yet idle threats began transforming into a tangible reality, a storm brewing beyond the hilltops, ominous shadows creeping forward as the rival families readied for battle. The scent of damp earth mixed with the heavy weight of untold stories hung thick in the air, foretelling impending dangers that even the bravest knights would think twice about confronting. Alara, with a heart that raced faster than horses at the starting line, could feel betrayal lurking around every corner, like a malevolent player waiting to pounce at an opportune moment. The time had come to decide. Would love find a way to save them? Or would the secrets of the past develop claws sharp enough to tear apart their fragile dreams? The crows called from above, bearing witness to their fateful choices. And in that moment, both lovers stood on the precipice of war, with either the world or the hearts of their families resting on their willing, yet trembling shoulders. In the shadow of ancient stone walls, where ivy coiled like a serpent around crumbling ramparts, Alara and Cedric ventured into the heart of their forbidden connection. The air crackled with tension, the sweet scent of blooming jasmine mixing awkwardly with the metallic tang of impending disaster. Each clandestine meeting crackled with the thrill of danger, as if they were characters in an over-the-top romance film, one where lips linger longer than necessary, and the soundtrack swells dramatically at just the right moments. Yet, as laughter danced between them like fireflies in the twilight, the dark clouds of suspicion darkened the horizon, hinting that their love might be woven into a tapestry of doom, as foretold by the ominous scrolls of their ancestors. Oh, the humorless irony of romance, where love stories often end with a kiss, theirs might end with a dagger, as whispers of a grim prophecy slithered through the corridors of power. Distrust festered like an untreated wound, infecting both their families. Ears perked up like hounds at a hunt, and the Valyrians were not about to let a couple of star-crossed lovers ruin their carefully stoked animosity. Declarations of fealty turned into jabs and stabs, as members of both bloodlines wore suspicion like fine silk cloaks, though hardly any of them looked good wearing it. Each gathering transformed into a battleground, where cordial exchanges were laced with barbed comments, like Victorian dinner parties, but with less tea and more hatred. The irony of it all was that while Alara and Cedric dreamed of a peaceful union, their families skyrocketed towards conflict with the enthusiasm of Black Friday shoppers fighting over the last TV. But lo, amidst the machinations, a figure emerged from the shadows, draped in layers thicker than a plot twist. This trusted advisor of the Valyrians had lovable jealousy thicker than your Aunt Edna's famous gravy, and twice as terrifying. Driven by envy and armed with malicious intent, he schemed to tear Alara and Cedric apart, eyeing their secret trysts through narrow slits of opportunity. He plotted like a mischief maker in a cartoon, complete with mustache twiddling and an increasingly absurd collection of booby traps. His plan, as cowardly as it was sneaky, echoed back to the tales of old like a villain auditioning for a B-movie role in a saga where betrayal was a requisite for survival. No one would see it coming. And oh, how he loved the thrill of the chase. With each encounter, the weight of danger pressed down on Alara and Cedric like an unsheathable sword hanging over their heads. Every creak of the floorboards beneath them made their hearts race, as if a battle drum had taken residence in their chests, calling them to face an enemy they couldn't see. The scent of damp earth and freshly cut hay filled the air, enriching their stolen moments with a wild kind of urgency, as if they were racing against time itself. They whispered sweet nothings against the roar of impending chaos, dodging the prying eyes and eager ears of their family's spies, creepy enough to make one feel like they were living in a Janet Jackson music video, half dancing, half hiding. Each stolen touch became a radical act of rebellion, and amidst these surreptitious encounters, they steeled their resolve, clenching their fists at the thought of a fateful betrayal lurking in every shadow. Alara and Cedric soon realized that their love story was not the only tale unfolding in this twisted yarn of fate. No longer just star-crossed lovers, they were unwitting pawns in a game more dangerous than a high-stakes poker night with a deck stacked against them. They clung to hope as fiercely as a child clings to their blanket during a thunderstorm, knowing that love alone might not be enough to overcome the tidal wave of treachery crashing around them. Ironically, as they fought to protect their burgeoning bond, they conjured fledgling strategies more convoluted than a plot twist in a soap opera, messy but utterly captivating, and with each heartbeat echoing their determination, they knew that though the whispers of betrayal surrounded them, the cry of love was loud enough to shatter even the darkest of conspiracies. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of crimson and gold, Alara and Cedric stood on the rickety old bridge over the gushing river. The air crackled with tension, mirroring the imminent storm brewing within their hearts. With war looming like dark clouds overhead, they clasped hands, their breaths mingling in the chilling breeze as they prepared to unleash a truth more daunting than any adversary they might face in battle. They weren't just lovers, they were a bridge between two clans ready to explode. The stakes were higher than a rogue catapult. If they dared declare their love now, could they possibly stave off the looming tide of conflict, or were they merely adding fuel to an already raging inferno, like tossing a lit match into a barrel of gunpowder? When they finally gathered their families, a motley crew of wary warriors and egotistical nobles, each convinced their way was the only right one, Alara's heart raced like a stallion bolting from a starting gate. She could almost smell the sweat and leather from her brother Thorn's battle armor, the scent heavy in the air like a perfume that heralded trouble. Cedric stood beside her, tall and defiant, but she could feel his pulse thundering in time with her own. The words they'd practiced swirled in her mind, battling with the cacophony of mocking laughter and skeptical whispers surrounding them. As Cedric stepped forward, the crowd hushed, tension rippling through the air like the moment before a thunderstorm. That electric silence before the first drop of rain. But declaration turned to catastrophe faster than you could say King's ransom. As Cedric's words hung in the air, a stunned silence engulfed the gathering, akin to the moment when a beloved sitcom character meets their untimely demise. Thorne's face blazed with outrage, his eyes narrowing like a predator stalking its prey. Alara felt the heat radiate from the two men, as if they were two phoenixes about to rise from the ashes of their family's disdain. What had been a declaration of love morphed into a battleground of honor. And in an instant, the two clans transformed from gallant allies to rival forces confronting each other. Alara realized, with a sinking feeling, that her daring stunt to unite them was fast becoming a foreshadowing of calamity, not the peace she had envisioned. At last, the confrontation ignited, and the rhythmic clang of metal meeting metal echoed like the beats of a war drum in the background of their heritage. Cedric and Thorne exchanged fierce blows amid the gasps and cheers of their families, whose loyalty shifted like the winds of change. Each strike unveiled more than just raw skill. It revealed their buried emotions, their fears, and the heavy price of pride. Alara stood frozen, heart pounding like a drummer at a festival, a swirling mix of sorrow and pride welling within her. This duel was more than an argument. It was a brutal canvas, revealing the chaotic masterpiece of their intertwined destinies. One moment of reckless love had unraveled decades of loyalty, transforming an age-old friendship into a visceral dance of death. The duel raged on, echoing not just in the valley, but in Alara's very soul. A grim reminder that love, much like a delicate rose, could pierce the heart just as easily as it could bloom. With every clang of swords and every kick of dust, she felt the pull of destiny tightening around her, while the scent of impending rain wafted through the air, as if nature itself anticipated the thunder of conflict. As the final blow hovered in the air, time seemed to freeze. Hearts beat in unison, divided between fealty and familial love. Would Thorne and Cedric emerge as brothers forged in fire? Or would this confrontation sever their fates like a battering ram through castle doors? Even amidst the chaos and impending destruction, Alara clung to one flickering hope. Maybe, just maybe, love could cut through the storm like a beacon shining through the darkest night. As dawn broke over the battlefield, a heavy fog clung to the ground like a shroud of secrets just waiting to be spilled. The clang of armor echoed like thunder in the valley, a cacophony of clattering swords and the guttural growls of battle-hardened war horses, their nostrils flaring with the scent of sweat and fear. Alara stood on a hillock, her heart pounding fiercely within her chest, the taste of iron lingering, a grim reminder of what was at stake. From across the field, Cedric's commanding shout pierced the air, a rallying cry as fierce as a lion's roar, igniting the flames of defiance in both their houses. Chaos swirled around them, a gory tornado of loyalties questioned and friendships tested. And beneath that chaos, their love remained a flickering flame, clamoring for survival amidst the gale of war. But in the great clamor of clashing steel, betrayal lurked like a feral cat in the shadows. Just when Alara believed that trust still littered the battlefield, a trio of sharp-eyed archers drew their bows, targets marked not just on enemies, but on former comrades. Whispers escalated into curses as the dark truth unraveled. Their advisor, the sly fox venerated by both families, had been a puppet dancing on the strings of sinister forces. A charity event gone awry, more like a vile scheme played out like an episode of Game of Thrones, where friends become foes, and the blood spills for reasons far darker than ambition alone. Irony dripped like blood. The very person they had trusted to guide them had led them right into betrayal's gaping jaws, eager to swallow their hopes whole amidst the tumultuous swirling of destiny, where valor and treachery intertwined like vines. A sudden clarity flashed through the haze. As swords clashed like thunder, promising to drown all screams in their metallic refrain, a figure emerged from the battlefield's fray, an unexpected ally with a heart as brave as Thor's hammer, with a battle cry that could rival any Marvel hero. The newcomer charged through the chaos, their weapon gleaming as if it had been forged in the fires of hell. Alara's breath caught in her throat as hope erupted like a wildfire. This was the surge of courage they desperately needed, just when it seemed the battle would swallow them whole. This brave soul wielded a chance for victory, igniting Alara and Cedric's hearts as they recognized the pivotal shift unfolding before their eyes. In that electrifying moment, amid the thunderous clashes and cries of despair, Alara and Cedric locked eyes across the fray. Time seemed to halt, the world around them fading into mere whispers as they were transported to a realm where nothing else mattered but the fabric of their bond. Would they let the suffocating shadows of betrayal choke their love, or would they rise like a phoenix from the ashes of deceit? They exchanged a quick glance laden with years of untold stories, heartbreaks, and silent promises, as if their souls were dancing in the very face of impending doom. Choosing love over despair, they stood undeterred, ready to face their destiny together, come hell or high water, or in this case, come blades and scorned allies. As the clash of fate descended upon them, Alara and Cedric's hands brushed like lightning in the storm, binding them in an electric connection. The air ignited with anticipation. Each heartbeat, each clash of steel, echoing the choices they were about to make, with the battlefield solidifying around them. The weight of their decision grew. Would they follow the path of their forebears, steeped in war and revenge, or carve out a new destiny, one spun from sacrifice and understanding? The stench of sweat, wounded pride, and desperation flooded their senses. Yet amidst the tide, they found clarity. United against the winds of fate, their love became the sword that would pierce through darkness, promising a tomorrow unbounded by the grim secrets of yesterday. As the last echoes of clashing swords faded into the solemn embrace of dawn, the land lay still, like a storyteller holding its breath. The aftermath of the battle had painted the sky in hues of crimson and gold, reminiscent of a butcher's apron and the first crocus petals of spring. Grief hung heavy in the air, a palpable force that weighed on the shoulders of the survivors from both the Valerian and Ashford families. It was in this mournful silence that the ghastly truth of the advisor's treachery unfurled like a dark flag, revealing how cunning and betrayal had sown discord just as surely as war had. And with the sun breaking timidly over the horizon, it cast light upon a common wound, binding these once feuding families in their shared sorrow and loss. Alara, with her hair catching the sunlight like threads of molten gold, stood resolute, a beacon of hope amid the ruins. Cedric, ever the brooding warrior with his charred armor and battle-worn visage, stood at her side, his heart pounding like a war-hammered drum in his chest. A spark ignited between them, a fierce passion kindled not just by love, but by a profound desire to forge a new destiny from the ashes of hatred. Who could blame them? They were like a couple in an epic saga, destined to defy the odds. Think Romeo and Juliet, but with more swords and fewer misunderstandings. They proposed an audacious plan, a union of their lineages, a heritage of peace and alliance that would make even the most cynical jester grin. The vision of a future unfurling before them shimmered like the morning dew on freshly sprouted grass, full of promise, yet still fragile. With every conversation, laughter slipped like notes from a lute, mingling with the aroma of burnt wood and singed flesh. They gathered their families, weary soldiers and grieving mothers, forming a circle where swords had once clashed. The air buzzed with the electric thrill of possibilities, as hopes replaced the empty threats of the past. Teaming up, Alara and Cedric held firm in their resolve to convert tales of vengeance into legends of restorative justice, proving that love, however trampled, could rise like a phoenix from the deadliest of coals. Through tears and shared stories of loss around flickering campfires, The two families began to stitch together the torn fabric of their fates. Something magical began to happen as laughter echoed. Rumors of the advisor's betrayal morphed into a rallying cry. A single tale of deceit blurring the lines between heroes and villains. They swapped war stories like Halloween candy, each one richer than the last, until even the darkest tragedies sparkled with a touch of irony that could make the gods chuckle. The road ahead was indeed fraught with shadows, but it was also brimming with hope. A new dawn that allowed righting of wrongs and healing of hearts, uniting their tribes like mismatched socks in a laundry basket, permanently lost to the ages. As days melted into weeks, love bloomed in the most unexpected gardens. The once bitter enemies found camaraderie in their shared dance of mourning and renewal. Alara and Cedric's bond flourished, vibrant and unwavering, even as the remnants of the war lingered like a stubborn stain on the land. The scent of blooming wildflowers intermingled with the echo of laughter and toasts. And as the sun set, a celestial canvas unfolded, drenched in colors of rejuvenation. Eldoria, marked by its legacy of bitterness, was on the cusp of a transformation, a realm where love triumphed over resentment, and secrets spun the very threads of unity. And so they stood, ready to embrace the dawning age, which, spoiler alert, would definitely be filled with more laughter than outcast nightfall.